I think anyone that's had to care for someone that's elderly or anyone with a chronic condition understands some of the challenges associated with their needs at a given point in time. People deteriorate, and picking up on that deterioration is often complicated. Care costs are escalating. So our solution is built to support those individuals, to understand those patterns of decline, to preempt some of their needs so that we can get in before anything bad happens to those people. T7 Tech has built a platform called Centaur, which ingests a whole host of data from different sensors that we place around an individual's home and wearable devices. With this data, we can understand patterns of behaviour around that individual, and we can also understand whether there are areas for concern, areas of decline, or perhaps they're struggling with certain things around the home. And it allows us to put support in earlier so that the person doesn't decline rapidly and end up in acute care. We've been really fortunate over the past year. The speed of delivery has helped us achieve more than we could possibly imagine. I'm very proud of everything we've achieved.
So, new haircut, new brand and a new business, all inside 12 months. Was it probably 18 months ago since we first met? I'm still not quite sure whatever possessed you to kick off this spectacular journey.
Well, yeah, it's been a journey and a half. It's been quite something. We've been very fortunate, really, but I think the whole journey started about 4.5 years ago. And possibly out of a personal experience that happened to me around 15 years ago. So unfortunately, I lost my sister to ALS, or motor neuron disease, as we call it in the UK. What I saw during the months that she was suffering with the disease is a slow decline. And she had good days and she had bad days. But we weren't entirely sure whether the following day was a real indicator of decline, or whether it was something that was just a bad day or an occurrence. And it sort of bugged me back then. It really, I mean, obviously it was devastating, the whole process. But it was something that really caught me. Of, you know, I'm a geek. I'm happy to acknowledge that. But there is so much evidence and data that even an individual who's caring for someone 24/7 still can't pick up, because the nuances and our human emotions sort of gets in the way of it a little. So we started coming up with the concept of putting sensors and understanding core activities around an individual's home, able to understand the nuances and triggers for decline. And I had the opportunity about 4 years ago, when I was Chief Digital Officer at Surrey County Council, to actually pilot this for the first time. So we did that for about a month, and out of it came a genuine opportunity, or I felt a genuine opportunity. Sadly, I left Surrey at that time. I was off to go and do some consultancy, but it had obviously bitten me so hard that I felt like I had to come back and get it. Fast forward a couple of years, I had the opportunity to set up a health and social care business with a number of partners, with my primary intention to continue to build this prototype out and to see how far we could push it. Within 3 months, we knew that there was a viable commercial case for it, that we'd sort of built a model around it, and then the prototype and T7 Tech, as we were known back then, was created. So yeah, that was about 2.5 years ago. And then we onboarded a whole host of customers during prototyping stage, lots of user experience testing, lots of research, testing of the algorithms. And then I came knocking about 18 months ago saying, right, now we need to scale. How do we do this? How do we get an architecture in place to allow us to onboard tens of thousands of customers a week onto the platform?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly touching story. I think it's a really amazing example of, I guess, you know, when we talk about not falling in love with the technology, but falling in love with the problem. A bit more of a difficult circumstance, and you know, really what led you to actually really properly fall in love with solving the problem. It's really interesting, though, I guess, you know, look at that specific problem and then what came out of that. We also see, like, certainly in the UK, the health sector is incredibly stretched. we have increasing inequality. We have aging populations. So there's a huge demand for this kind of solution and this problem to be solved, and no doubt a role for the technology like Lucie's and her organisation. But it was really difficult, like really difficult to get noticed. So even with an amazing solution, tell us about like what, you know, how did you even get the product in front of people and get people to notice what was going on here?
I think we're a mission-driven organisation. So when we talk about what we do and why we do it, people buy into it. So actually, once the doors open, people absolutely understand why we do what we do. They understand the power of the AI and the personalised understanding of an individual. It doesn't matter whether you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or whether you wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning. That shouldn't affect our understanding of somebody's well-being. Everyone's unique, and that's the power of the technological tools that we have at our disposal today. So I think, you know, talking to people about the vision is something that sort of comes naturally and is easy to talk about, and people buy it. I think one of the learning curves that we had, and it's probably during the prototyping phase, is that we needed to build a really robust commercial model to sit alongside it. So how do we work with people that already have access within the market to our consumer base? You know, so we've started building a distributor model, incentivizing those distributors to take it to market at scale, and that's been hugely successful for us. So we're operating now across the UK, in Europe. We've just set up an office in Thailand, and in fact, I'm just about to sign a lease on a property in Toronto tomorrow. So, yeah, it's been a very successful sort of approach to getting in through the door.
But scaling through partners and
absolutely
consortium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I guess the optimistic view I take on the UK health sector now is with a new health minister in Matt Hancock, who came from the Department for Digital Media and Sports. His family has a technology company. He really understands the power of technology, and we were at an event 2-3 weeks ago. He actually used the words agile, iterative, and open, which I thought was very encouraging for a leading UK minister to actually say, and that, you know, the NHS had to be more open to organisations like Lucie's and many others that are really actually thriving in the UK. I touched upon it in the introduction. We know that the health tech sector is probably one of the most well-funded in the startup investor ecosystem, but it wasn't that easy for you in the beginning. Any ideas, any reasons why that was difficult to get the money together early on?
So this is where I have to admit that not only am I a geek, I'm also fairly stubborn and bloody-minded. It wasn't that the money wasn't there, and it wasn't that the potential for investment wasn't there. I think we were looking for a very keen sort of investor. We were wanting someone that would go with us on our journey for growth, so that we got a fairly, you know, substantial amount of money out front that would give us enough time to really bed in the product and take it to market in a way that we were confident that we could build the brand and everything else around it. So we were very lucky, but it took us several months of searching to find that specific individual.
I remember Lucie bringing to us this great idea with a £500,000 price tag. We said, yeah, you know, when we set this ThoughtWorks Ventures thing up, we weren't actually investing. So what we had to do was go back around that first cycle and work with Lucie to build a business case that was robust enough to attract the initial money. I would say, actually, this is probably one of my favourite and best examples of what I would call the lean startup. We didn't have a lot of money in the beginning, so we had to actually even break down the classic early parts of a process that we probably all know about in the minimum viable product. We started with minimum viable commercials, which allowed us to secure the first round of funding, and then the minimum viable experiment, which was the smallest pieces of technology that we could possibly put together. So this was the devices, the platform, and the ingestion models to actually show that we could make this thing work end to end. And another interesting part of what we talked about in the early part of you know, why we set Ventures up was the influence of China.
Yeah.
And China's had a big kind of role to play in the very early stages of your business, and actually, you know, the current development of MySense.ai. Tell us about your China experience.
Well, you know, I was very fortunate to have been introduced to China at quite a young age. I first went across to to China at the age of 14, and then it became a bit of a passion for me. I've desperately tried to learn the language, so please, if anyone speaks Chinese in the audience, don't ask, because it didn't work. But it's a place that has fascinated me for many years. And when we were looking at creating this business, you know, most people said, "You're mad. Why would you look at hardware, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence, and that customer experience piece? You know, you should really just focus on one." But for us, it's all about the integrity of the data model, and to do that, we need to work with Chinese manufacturers to build us the devices. The scale that we're operating at now, there's no way that we could have kept that in-house or have gone to perhaps some of the more local manufacturers. And working with the Chinese manufacturers has been incredible. And when we got the opportunity to work with the team out in Shenzhen and Xi'an with ThoughtWorks, you know, it was an absolute brilliant experience from start to finish. They were absolute superstars.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, and just going on that kind of initial journey into China, just super exciting. So one of our first trips was to Shenzhen. We went to the electronics market, so we were actually walking around markets, actually pulling together semiconductors and, you know, bits and pieces of devices to build these sensors, and then actually put in a software team together with them. So trying to bring the cycle times of hardware development, embedded and you know, agile software development all together in this first kind of this first part of the process, and it all seems to have worked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Frida yesterday, I thought the end of the day talk was brilliant actually, and Frida touched on, you know, some of the more ethical parts of artificial intelligence and AI for good. I think this is definitely AI for good. But I think maybe a lot of the concerns in the market around particularly health are, you know, certainly concerns around patient record, electronic medical record. What is MySense? What is MySense's position on the patient record?
So we're just going through the accreditation process for becoming a B Corp. So we're pretty proud of that as a organisation, which means we have, and it's within our mission and our values as well as an organisation. We pride ourselves on being an ethical business. And predominantly, the thing that we hang that off is our data model. So as far as we're concerned, our customers own all their own data.
Right.
We are essentially stewards of it. That means our data model is, like I say, end-to-end secure. So none of the data ever resides on any third-party servers. It entirely resides with us. So we take data directly from the devices straight up into our platform and run analytics on it. We have a very simple consent model. It's a 3-question in 8-year-old English consent model. So people absolutely know what they're signing up for. No hidden terms and conditions. So yeah, it's something we've worked hard on. Something that we're pretty proud of. And I think it's an important thing for us as businesses, particularly in the current circumstances, to sort of be looking at. I think there's an interesting sort of extension of the data ethics when we get to, you know, we ingest somewhere in the region of around 25,000 data points per day for an individual. So it's a huge amount of data. And if they accept and allow us as part of that consent process, we can stratify that data up and start looking across commonalities across condition sets and commonalities across demographic. And there's a really interesting ethical question in that space that sort of sees us say, okay, well, maybe not right now, but when we have, you know, hundreds of millions of data points, and we're able to accurately predict trends across conditions. What happens if somebody doesn't present with a diagnosis, but actually we found something that would indicate that diagnosis within the data set? So it's an interesting problem that we and our ethics committee are sort of tackling at the moment. But yeah, I think that's going to be met through continuing to work with some brilliant partners and hopefully find more partners to be able to support us in how we communicate those things.
Good. I think there's always an element of good luck and timing in these kind of stories. The combination of the advances in technology, so the availability of some of these technologies. I guess this is going back 4 years for you as a whole kind of story and experience.
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting that when we tell the MySense story, the technology is very much in the background, and the story is all about the care and the provision of what you guys do. But I am interested to understand, like, what does your team look like now? So I know when we first started, it was you and somebody else and us and a bunch of developers.
Yeah.
But now you have like a full, a fully fledged team and a business. What does it look like?
Yeah, so we're 25 strong in the UK. We've got a couple of people in Thailand. We've got a couple of people in Europe, and one, hopefully two, in Canada now. So we are growing. We've brought development and code creation in-house, and all our algorithms have been built in-house as well. So we have firmware developers, full stack developers, front-end specific developers. We have data scientists, clinical researchers, and then a whole host of commercial staff as well. So yeah, it's been quite a journey in terms of building the team, and to pick up the points yesterday in terms of how do you get these people on board, and how do you get the talent. Actually, it's really helped being this sort of mission driven organization, because 80% of the staff that we have on board have cared for someone, or have had somebody with a long-term chronic or long-term neurological disease within their family or wider friend group. So, these are people that want to fix the problem that we as a business want to fix, and therefore we're very lucky to have them.
Yeah. So unashamed plug time. I think if we extend that to our enterprise corporate clients in the room, I think if there's anybody that feels that they can help Lucie on her extended journey around the world, then please do get in touch. So just to summarize, I mean, it's been an incredible 12 months in certainly getting the product built, getting that to market, and actually having traction, lots of traction with customers. In the next 365 days, what excites you the most, but what terrifies you the most?
I think it's okay to admit that I'm equally excited and terrified, isn't it? I think that's probably okay. I think 2019 is going to be pretty full on. Just looking at the opportunities that we have in front of us, aside from the order book, it's really the opportunities that global expansion and potentially a new product line as well is going to offer is something that's genuinely exciting. So yeah, it will be a roller coaster, as it always is, but it will be fun.
Good. Well, listen. My 5th time at Paradigm Shift, I've met some amazing and very courageous leaders in my time doing this event. It's an absolute pleasure to have worked with you this last 12 months. You are the epitome of a courageous leader for me. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story this morning, Lucie.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.